It's 10 o'clock. I'm Yalda Hakim, and this is Sky News at 10, live from Washington. Our top story. Less than 2 days to go for Donald Trump and Kamala Harris to try to secure the winning votes in the tightest election in recent memory. The former president sounding a familiar tune, attacking the media and claiming his opponents plan to steal the election.
What do we always say? Keep Kamala and carry on, Allah.
Kamala's comedy double as the Democratic candidate gets a poll boost in a state which should be her opponents to lose. And the ground operation in the election's ground zero, the young volunteers trying to swing the vote one household at a time.
Also on Sky News at 10 tonight. The King of Spain cursed in the city at the epicenter of the country's deadly floods as divers continue to search for victims. By royal appointment, the premiere of Paddington's latest adventure as the family favorite returns to the cinema screen. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30.
Good evening from Washington. I'm Yalda Hakim. Just over 48 hours from now, the polls will be closing in the United States election, and we'll begin to learn the results in perhaps the closest contest in modern memory. Tonight, there's yet another indication of that closeness, with both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris campaigning in states they might have hoped would already be secure. Well, our correspondents are tracking the candidates campaigning tonight. Kamala Harris is in Michigan for us, as is our correspondent Yusra El-Beguir. And Donald Trump has held a rally in Kinston, North Carolina. And there is where we start tonight with our US correspondent, James Matthews. James, over to you.
Hi, Yalda. Thanks very much. Donald Trump still on his feet here in Kinston, North Carolina. This is very much a battleground state. Donald Trump working it very hard, barnstorming this place with 4 visits to North Carolina in the days before Tuesday's election. He's currently on his 3rd of 4. A must-win state for Donald Trump. He won it in 2016 and in 2020. To lose it at this election would significantly narrow his path to victory.
Here comes the 47th President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump! Yay!
This is an election campaign coming into life. 2 days until the vote. It's all about the battleground.
Oh, I think Trump's got it.
We need someone that's going to go out there and just go after it.
Good luck, go Trump.
This was Kinston, North Carolina. High fives at a second Sunday stop. Donald Trump had already spoken in Pennsylvania. His advisors might want to focus on issues. Their candidate is looking elsewhere.
They cheat on elections. They just announced a fake poll. It's a very demonic party. And these bloodsuckers up there, they do nothing about it. To get me, somebody would have to shoot through the fake news. And I don't mind that so much.
That last remark prompted a clean-up statement from the Trump campaign, that he was saying the media was in danger, looking out for their welfare more than his own. Kamala Harris had taken her weekend campaigning onto the TV stage. This was America's Saturday Night Live.
You and me both, sister.
Politics doubled as showbiz.
Keep Kamala and carry on, Allah.
And dear God, we thank you now.
At church, she read the lesson in contrast and her pursuit of it.
While we know there are those who seek to deepen division, sow hate, spread fear, and cause chaos, this moment in our nation has to be about so much more than partisan politics.
Oh, look at that, yes.
Back in Kinston, North Carolina, Donald Trump was making his 3rd of 4 weekend appearances in the state. He won it in the last two elections. To lose it in the next one would narrow his path to victory. Republicans had woken to news of a poll that showed their man behind in Iowa. It's one poll. It would be one big shock.
In terms of the issues, I mean, I think inflation's number one. And obviously where we're at with other countries, that's huge, especially where all our tax dollars are going.
Everything he says is true. And women still vote for him and follow his campaign.
He couldn't have said it better when he got nicked in the ear. Fight, fight, fight. That's what we need to do. We need to fight.
And
we need to fight for that little guy right there.
Donald Trump's advisors have long told him to concentrate on the issues, not the rhetoric. But as this campaign comes to a close, far from reeling it in, he's rolling it out. It speaks to the locked-in vote, no doubt. For Trump, squaring the circle depends on how it lands beyond that. James Matthews, Sky News, in Kinston, North Carolina.
Well, we'll be speaking to James in a moment, but the campaigns have spent months preparing their ground operations, or their so-called ground operations. Armies of volunteers going street to street and door to door to get out the vote. Well, let's get our next report from our correspondent Yusra El-Bagir, who went out with one of the team of campaigners in Michigan trying to swing the result.
In a race this close, every vote counts.
Thank you for your time. Enjoy your day.
And young Americans are going door to door, canvassing for their candidate. Sometimes it works.
You have two options, Democrat, Democrat, Democrat.
Sometimes it doesn't.
No, thank you. I'm going to need you guys to go home, please.
All right, that's okay.
So a lot of houses might not answer because they see us and they already know. They already don't support it, so they don't really want to hear us out as well.
Saginaw, Michigan is a swing county in a swing state, where the preference of president changes from street to street, even house to house.
You've got a sign saying Kamala Harris for president right next to a house with signs supporting Donald Trump, in a county that's divided and a country that's split over who will become the next president. So who do you guys think is going to win?
I genuinely have no idea. It's hard to tell when the polls have been deadlocked for a week now.
Yeah, it's really, nobody can say for sure. The one thing I don't see happening is a Trump landslide, but other than that, Trump could narrowly win, Harris could win by a little or a lot. Nobody really knows.
In Saginaw's main university campus, student leaders from the competing political parties are engaged in an election of a lifetime.
This little rural Midwestern county holds the stake for both candidates come next Tuesday.
So competitive that Michigan's governor has stopped by for a visit.
Young people have the most to gain or lose based on the outcome of this election. They will live with the consequences longer than any of the rest of us will.
At Michigan's main university campus, the divide isn't so stark. In Ann Arbor is a wave of blue.
Like, as a woman and person of color, I don't want my rights taken away. And I think when I think of Trump, that's all I think of, my rights being taken away.
I think it's just scary that the sides are so divisive. That they're so polarized.
The stakes are high, and early youth voters like Olami in pink are fueling forecasts that youth voter turnout in this election could be the highest in history.
I also think it'd be really just amazing to be able to witness the first female president this country has ever had. So I wanted to be a part of making that happen.
And at the local bar, amidst the liberal students, are young working Trump supporters having a drink.
This year I am compelled to vote for Trump. When I was a kid, I remember how things used to be under a Democrat or a Republican, and how things are under either one of them is not the same anymore, and I don't think that the government is what it is.
I'm going to be going for Trump.
What's making you go for Trump?
I liked when he was president 4 years ago, and I just want to see him finish what he started.
But across the table, his best friend is not so sure.
This might be the election where I do go to the other side if I do, but I don't know if I'm quite ready yet either at the same time.
This election has young Americans adamant to shape their future. Only days from being decided, with no clear shot of who might win. Yusra Bagher, Sky News, Michigan.
Well, let's bring in Yusra, who joins us from Michigan, and of course, James, who joins us from North Carolina. Let's go to you first, Yusra. We could see there the importance of the ground operations for both campaigns. I mean, the Harris campaign has had thousands of people door knocking, and that's been really crucial to her cause.
Absolutely, Yalda. I mean, at this point, Michigan's is anyone's to win. And here at the Michigan State University, Harris is making a last-bid attempt to get as many young people on her side as possible. And we've been on campuses across the state. We've been in Ann Arbor, in Flint, at the University of Michigan, where students have been voting early, like you saw in our reports, to make sure that their candidate, Harris, has a fighting chance. But all around them are working communities, working families, where young people who went straight into the job market are banking on Trump to fix the economy and bring back the prosperity that he's promised to Michigan. He said he's going to make Michigan the motor capital of the world again, and people are hoping that that's true. But here in Michigan State University, at this Harris rally, there's a lot of excitement for her. There are young people here hoping they can secure their future with a vote for Harris, and there are parents here who are hoping they can protect their children from the policies that they think Trump might bring into play.
Yusra, as you say, Michigan, one of the crucial battleground states that we'll be watching very closely over the next couple of days. Let's go to James, who joins us now from North Carolina. James, in the last hour when we spoke, we saw Donald Trump on stage there. One of the places that he has his eyes set on, North Carolina. He, of course, won it in 2020, as we saw there in your report, in 2016. So crucial that he makes sure that North Carolina remains in his column in 2024.
That's right, Yalda. If he does not win here, then he will struggle. And that would be a huge boost for Kamala Harris if she can take North Carolina. There is concern, clearly, amongst Donald Trump's advisors at what he says on stage. Continually, they have advised him to focus on the issues where they think they can score, on the economy and on immigration. But look at Donald Trump today, talking about the Democratic Party as demonic, talking about the notion of journalists being shot. It carries a menacing tone, and that on the back of a week, when we saw Madison Square Garden talk about Puerto Ricans, racism and misogyny and so on. So it does rather feed the narrative that Kamala Harris wants to perpetrate, that this election is about a decision between recklessness and responsibility. And I suppose, obviously, it comes down to the voters. They will look at what they hear from both candidates. And the more Donald Trump talks the way he does and articulates that kind of material, then the more his advisors will be concerned about the voters in the middle, people who are going to make a late decision. What will make them lean Donald Trump's way, which has to involve giving him the benefit of the doubt, given the kind of thing that we have heard today, and indeed we have heard throughout the Trump campaign from the central character.
James, Yusra, thank you both so much, and I look forward to discussing more with you on election night. Well, let's get more analysis from our Mark Stone, who is here with me live in Washington. Really good to see you, Mark. We've obviously all come into your territory in the final days and hours. Thank you. But we do have sort of 48 hours to go until those first polls close. And it feels like this sort of frenetic rush towards the end when, all these polls are coming out, and it's been neck and neck, but we won't really know until Tuesday.
We may not know on Tuesday. Look, the first thing to say is we just don't know. And that is what makes this so exciting. That's what makes it such an important election. The polls on the face of it are so unbelievably tight. But, I have detected some shift in mood over the course of the past week. I've been speaking to officials in the Harris campaign today and who I've spoken to over the course of the past few weeks. They feel more upbeat, more buoyed at the moment. I've been speaking to officials from North Carolina who say that they feel that it's better to be Harris than Trump in North Carolina at the moment. That's interesting. If she can win that state, that's huge for her. The Iowa poll. Iowa is a ruby red state, a state that no one expected just a few months ago that Harris had any chance of winning. The polls now, one poll, a very respected one, puts her ahead. I don't think there's any suggestion she will necessarily win there, but if she does well there, well, that bodes well for those blue wall states in the north, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania as well. So that's really interesting. They are buoyed, and I think that's something to look at, certainly. Trump, on the other hand, his officials have been trying to temper the rhetoric that seems to have gone up over the course of the past few days. That's been their line over the course of the past day or so. Look at his mood as well. His mood a few weeks ago, he was upbeat because he seemed to have the momentum then. His mood is very, very different now, and he's talking a lot in the last couple of days about fraud. What does that suggest? Maybe he thinks he's going to lose, but, you know, who knows?
Who knows? We know nothing at this point, as you say, and it's not over till it's over. Thank you so much, Mark, for bringing us up to date. And of course, as I said, we will be speaking to the team here on the ground and across the United States over the course of the next few days and throughout the week as we wait to see what happens here on election night and beyond. So do join me and the rest of the team on Tuesday, the 5th of November, where we will have a 12-hour special from across the country. But for now, Barbara, back to you at Sky News Centre.
Yelda, thank you. Let's go to Spain now, where the royal family felt the rage today of some of their people at the authorities' slow response to the flooding which hit the country's southeast 5 days ago. The number of confirmed deaths has now risen to 217. Most of those people were in Valencia, where thousands of extra troops have been deployed to help with the recovery operation. The King and Queen visited the region today, but they were met by abuse and angry crowds in the devastated town of Paiporta. Meanwhile, in a neighbouring suburb, police sent scuba divers into an underground car park at the Bonaire shopping centre, where hundreds of cars are submerged. Our Europe correspondent Adam Parsons has this report now from Aldaya in Valencia.
By the time King Felipe got here, the fury was boiling over. For 5 days, Paiporta has suffered on its own, left to repair itself. And now the exhaustion and the anger found a focus. Mud and insults thrown at the king. In the end, Felipe and the Queen were smuggled out, his visit cut short in the face of such rage. People here tell us they have had no help. They feel helpless and abandoned. Down the road, there's no time for distractions. A massive search operation at the region's biggest shopping centre. They're pumping out the underground car park, which was swamped when the floods came in. 2 floors down, hundreds of cars and a grim question. How many bodies are within them? Emergency teams have brought robots, kayaks and scuba divers. But this is perilous, dangerous work in filthy, dark water.
The aftermath of these floods has been dominated by images of devastation, of ruined towns and shattered lives. But what's happening in that underground car park is something more focused and, in a way, more sinister. Because there is a feeling here that what they'll discover when that water is pumped out will be very bad. We just don't know how bad it could be.
Christina's role is to check cars for bodies. She accuses the government of playing down the number of deaths.
It's not even true. Like, we're in the point that we're counting in hundreds. My mom's been helping the army. She's a doctor. And she was like helping with, counting bodies and everything. In 6 hours, they got 80 people.
Whatever the number, this is a horrific, agonising catastrophe for Spain. The pain rolls on. Adam Parsons, Sky News, Aldaya, Valencia.
It is a rare politician who says they were wrong about something. But the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, said exactly that to Sky News today over comments she made during the election campaign, saying that higher taxes would not be needed. Well, one politician not known for admitting failure is the new Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, and she has spent the day finalising her new shadow cabinet team. Sky's chief political correspondent, John Craig, reports.
From a chancellor accused of making misleading promises about tax rises during the election campaign and then raising them by £40 billion in the budget, a candid admission.
I was wrong on the 11th of June. I didn't know everything, because when I arrived at the Treasury on the 5th of July, so just under a month after I said those words, I was taken into a room by the senior officials at the Treasury, and they set out the huge black hole in the public finances beyond which anybody knew about at the time of the general election.
This was what Rachel Reeves pledged in an election news conference on June the 11th.
We don't need higher taxes. What we need is growth. And I don't want to, and I will have no plans to increase any taxes beyond those which we have already set out.
And Robert Jenrick, 41,000.
For the new Conservative leader, Kemi Badenoch, her first task is assembling her top team. Her first appointment was Rebecca Harris, a pro-Brexit government whip for the past 7 years, as chief whip. Badenoch's supporters, meanwhile, are waiting for the call.
My main priority is to be part of the team that rebuilds the Conservative Party. Kemi wants to lead a renewal of the whole movement from top to bottom. So I will serve in whichever capacity she thinks I am best suited.
But after admitting in her victory speech that the Tories in government let standards slip, Ms Badenoch has already provoked a row by claiming the Partygate scandal was overblown. Labour and the Liberal Democrats claim the comment is an insult to the families who lost relatives during the COVID pandemic. Kemi Badenoch will make her Commons debut as opposition leader at Prime Minister's Questions on Wednesday, when she's certain to renew the Tory attack on the tax rises in Rachel Reeves' budget. But while political opponents continue to attack the Chancellor, she has some fans among the public. John Craig, Sky News.
Police Scotland says it has received a report of sexual assault against former Scottish First Minister Alex Salmond, who died last month at the age of 69. Police say the information is being assessed and describe the alleged incident as non-recent. In 2020, Alex Salmond walked free from the High Court in Edinburgh after being cleared of 13 sexual assault charges involving 9 women. Israel said tonight it had carried out a ground raid into Syria to capture a Syrian citizen, the first time it has admitted such an operation. And it comes as the assault inside Lebanon continues, killing a Hezbollah commander in Juwaya. At least 52 people were also killed on Friday in heavy Israeli airstrikes in the northeast Bekaa Valley. Sky News has been to visit a family whose 1-year-old daughter was severely burned in an Israeli strike, which took place in southern Lebanon on September the 23rd. Now, the family sheltered in the town of Tyre before finally making to the Gitao Hospital's burn unit in Beirut. A warning that this report from our correspondent Ivor Bennett includes distressing pictures of the little girl's burns.
She is the very definition of innocence. Not even 2 years old, but still a victim of this brutal war. From her head to her toes, nearly half of Ivana's tiny body is covered in burns, the result of an Israeli airstrike. Her family was preparing to flee their home in the south just as the missile fell.
Everything was on fire. There was a black smoke. I only managed to find my children from their screams. My husband rescued one and I the other. We had to escape through the window. It was a very, very painful day, too much. And I'm still in this nightmare.
Thank you! Bravo! This was Ivana before the nightmare, playing with her sister Rahaf. Bravo! Compared to the images from afterwards, she's barely recognisable. Their injuries were so severe they had to be transferred to a hospital in Beirut for treatment, where both have undergone multiple skin grafts. At times for Ivana, it's all too much, but the worst is now over.
She was in a very bad situation. She couldn't move her legs, her mouth, nothing. Honestly, I didn't have any hope she could survive. But thank God she's getting better day by day.
The hospital houses Lebanon's only specialist burns unit, and with the war, it's in demand like never before. Next door to Ivana is 11-year-old Mohammed, yet another young life forever altered.
The medics here say the influx of burns victims in the last 6 weeks has been relentless, ever since Israel escalated its campaign against Hezbollah. And even though they've tripled capacity in that time to try and meet demand, they're still struggling to cope.
And despite their best efforts, they can't save everyone.
We have patient 90% fourth degree, not 1 degree, degree 1 or degree 2, but fourth
degree burns on 90% of their bodies.
Yes. We do all thing for this patient, but sometimes we can't do anything.
But Ivana and her sister are among the many they have saved here. One family that is still complete. Ivor Bennett, Sky News, Beirut.
Our correspondent Ivor Bennett there on some of the victims of Israel's attacks in Lebanon. OK, let's get the latest sport now from Sky Sports News.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
How do you feel about yourself as a black woman competing in a sport? Do you feel like anything has changed, improved, gone worse?
Having athletes like you, I think it's really empowering and really inspiring. But I think, you know, it also comes with its challenges. In every aspect of the sport, like the coaching, like I think we can do a better job, and it's nice that we're pushing the barriers and seeing black females at the top, but it's not easy for us. Just getting us into these spaces, I feel like is really important, like having our voices heard and having our needs met and people kind of understanding it on all levels.
I think my narrative is different depending on who I talk to. It is important that we understand that our narratives sometimes is what we think of ourselves and also is what other people think of us. And sometimes they're not the same thing. They're not the same thing, so we all have to be kind of cognizant of those messages and images that we put out of ourselves. Because it might not be what we think it is or what we think it should be. And I just suffer from that a lot, I think, in my career, was thinking I had, you know, almost having this negative perception of myself because I thought that's what other people thought of me. And I think that did a lot of damage. So I think it really is important how you see yourself, but also have a realistic view of what maybe other people do think of you as well, so you don't sell yourself short. You train in the States. How do you find that compares to being in the UK in terms of having ethnic coaches in the sport?
I do find with America, it does feel quite like more freedom to be yourself, which sounds weird, but I think going out there, I felt more like I could really just kind of less judgmental. Like I can go out there and kind of do what I want to do, and I have more of a voice, maybe. And I also feel like the athletes over there, the people I'm around, they're very like big, not, I wouldn't say bigger personalities, but they're more just, they're unapologetically themselves. Like they're not afraid of anything. Whereas I kind of do feel sometimes, even growing up in England, it's not like we tread water, but I feel like we kind of have to be a little bit careful always how we present ourselves.
How do you think we could improve based on what you said?
People need to use their platform more and just be their authentic selves. The media is just such a great platform, and it's maybe something that you guys weren't able to utilize like back in the day, but right now, like this is this generation life, and I just love being able to just share your story and just, as I said, just being yourself.
What I do wish I could have gotten involved in is the fact that you have your voice, you have your platforms, you are very, 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 very good at social media, and you're able to be your own personality. Whereas for us, we had to rely on a newspaper speaking for us, and if they wrote something you didn't like, which was often in my case, you know.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
The latest Paddington film has quite an act to follow. Its predecessor, Paddington 2, had a famously flawless review record on one popular film website. Well, it means that the voice of the bear, Ben Whishaw, told us he was feeling the pressure when making the latest version. Ashna Hurinag was at the premiere in London.
Make sure your face is within the red circle.
It's a face we've missed.
3, 2, 1.
And now our favourite charming bear is back. This time for a heady adventure, retracing his roots in Peru, with the help from a few well-known faces.
He's coming!
Now back in London, stars of the third Paddington instalment can't wait to bring the magic alive once again.
It's hard because particularly the last film of Paddington was just so adored by everybody, it seemed, like old and young and everything in between. So, yeah, I guess I did feel the pressure.
The apprehension is understandable. It's been 7 years since the last film. But this one already comes with the royal seal of approval, a photograph of the curious bear's beloved Jubilee high tea with the late Queen set to feature.
It goes back to one real, genuine national treasure meeting a fictional one and sharing a moment at the palace at her Jubilee. It's very touching. It's a nice little, as they call it, Easter egg for the audience to spot.
It's hard to believe that much of this film was shot just outside of London. It is that state-of-the-art technology that brings the Peruvian jungle alive. And that same skill set is what beautifully captures this 50-year-old literary icon. What didn't need artificially recreating, though, was Paddington's passport, after the Home Office issued a real one especially.
Welcome to Peru.
Despite the stellar cast list, there is only ever going to be one star of this show who is not short of admirers.
He's like the perfect little creature, and if any children or adults are looking for someone to look up to, they couldn't do wrong, really, by following Paddington. He's always kind, always polite. He believes that he thinks the best of everybody.
I appear to be driving the boat!
This furry national treasure returns to our screens on Friday. Ashna Harinag, Sky News.
That was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by journalist and author Rachel Shabi and broadcaster and financial analyst Albi Amankona. Welcome both. Now, among the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of The Guardian. The headline, Harris and Trump make final push in swing states. We'll be right back.
This nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom.
A date which will live in infamy.
A short time ago, an American airplane dropped one bomb.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things. Not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
Well, I'm not a crook.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Today, our very freedom came under attack.
We are the change that we seek.
It's been the honor of my life to serve as your president. I love my country more.
We're going to make America great again.
While I may be the first woman in this office, I will not be the last.
There's been 46 presidents of the United States. Who will be next in the White House? Get the full story first on Sky News.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus, and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
I say, bring it on.
With America divided and tensions running high, get ready for an election like no other.
Join our teams as we follow the campaign trail as America decides.
We will win, win, win.
Get closer to the action this US election with full reaction and analysis.
Sky News, the full story first.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with journalist and author Rachel Shabi and broadcaster and financial analyst Albi Amankona. So let's see what is on some of those front pages. Well, The Guardian leads with the US election as the race for the White House enters its final stretch. The Eye says their polling shows that while more Britons are hoping for Kamala Harris to win, most actually think Donald Trump will become the next president. The Express leads with the Chancellor's admission to Sky News that she was wrong to say she wouldn't raise taxes during the election, while The Telegraph writes about her defense about inheritance tax on farmers. Meanwhile, one of Britain's leading businessmen has told The Times that raising inheritance tax on farms and family businesses would kill entrepreneurship. The Mail reports on the new Tory leader's own plans for the economy as she appoints her shadow cabinet tomorrow. The Mirror splashes an exclusive photo of what it reports was the murder weapon used by Lord Lucan. Rainstorm reads the Metro after Spain's king was hit with mud and insults from angry flood survivors. The Financial Times reports on a Chinese tax crackdown on wealthy individuals and companies, which it says would damage investor confidence. While the Daily Star says we're in for an unusually warm bonfire week. And a reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the program, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's papers while you watch us. Well, now we're joined by the journalist and author Rachel Shabi and broadcaster and financial analyst Albi Amankona. Thank you both so much for being with us. Okay, unsurprisingly, with really hours to go now before the US election, let's take a look at the front page of The Eye, the US election one way leading a lot of the papers. But this is a particular poll which actually reflects what we in the UK think of the US election. Rachel, talk us through it.
Yeah, we should lead with what Britons think about the US election. Absolutely.
Oh, we care.
Yeah. So 47% of Brits think Harris winning would be better compared with 27% for Trump, but most think that Trump will be president. And I guess that's the sort of horrifying sense that many people are getting in these last hours, as you say. I certainly am no expert on the polling, but from what I understand, the polling that is on such a knife edge, that has it neck and neck between the two, this so closely run race. It's also the case that in the last two elections, the polls undercounted Trump. So were we to assume that undercounting for Trump is a pattern, then that would suggest then that, you know, Britons are right to think that, unfortunately, a Trump win is heading our way.
I mean, it's interesting looking at the numbers and the phrasing as well. They would think Kamala Harris would be the best outcome for the UK. And it's interesting how sometimes when we look at foreign elections, there's sort of like a political affinity. So right-wing people here might want, the right-wing, the Republicans to win in the States. Do you get the sense that that is reflected in this poll or generally from the coverage that you've seen?
No, I don't. But then I would also say that support for Trump within the Conservative Party, despite what Liz Truss and Boris Johnson say, is actually quite low. When you actually have a look at the polling of the different types of political parties and the people that support Trump, the only party where there are more Trump supporters than not Trump supporters are actually Reform voters. But in every other voting cohort, whether it's Labour, whether it's Conservative, whether it's Lib Dem, most British voters do not want Trump to be back in the White House. Now, unfortunately, we're not going to be the ones voting in this election. I think if we were, the outcome might be very different. But ultimately, whoever is the British Prime Minister will have to work with whoever the US President is. We'll just have to grit our teeth and get on with it.
Well, we're hours away, and of course, there's been all sorts of polls out. There is one that came out in the last few hours about Iowa, a swing state, very important, usually goes Republican, but this time it seems that Kamala Harris is 3 points ahead.
Yeah, this freak poll has got, the Harris team sort of holding out a sense of hope. Unsurprisingly, as with all things that Trump doesn't like, he's attacked it as a fake poll. He says that this poll, which obviously is conducted in a fair and, accurate way in the way that all polls are, is fake because, quote, "They told me I'm down in Iowa. I don't think so. A good friend of mine said that poll is wrong." So, an accurate professional poll versus Trump's mate who says it was fake. But it just speaks to the nature of the entire campaign of his, unsurprisingly, has been fueled by this sort of attack on, attacks on the opposition, attacks on the press, right? Attacks on dissenters within, suggestions that, the army should be called in against them. It's been a really vitriolic, unsurprisingly, campaign that he's been running. And in the last few days, it has got even exponentially worse.
I mean, polls have been wrong before, right? And actually, this one is by the Des Moines Register Mediacom, and they're a widely respected company. But this isn't just about polls being wrong. This tends to be an attack on trust that Trump pushes often.
Well, Rachel, the first thing you mentioned about Trump earlier on when we were discussing it was that the polls in 2016 and 2020 actually undercounted Trump. So Trump may have a point here. Now, whether or not he should have said that it was because his friend told him this poll is wrong, I'm not sure I'd be using that source. But I think it's perfectly reasonable for Trump to say polls have got it wrong before and they might get it wrong again in order to keep his voters happy and not have them demoralised in what they might find to be quite a disappointing result from a pollster.
OK, well, we'll find out soon enough. Of course, polling day on Tuesday. Let's go to the front page of the Metro. Very shocking pictures coming out of Spain. Now, obviously, we've had shocking pictures coming out of Spain for the past couple of days because of those floods. But now the King and Queen visited an area of Valencia, and they were effectively sort of attacked, called murderer and sworn at, and had mud flung at them.
Yeah, this is a really shocking reception that they got, and I'm sure that they were absolutely shocked as well. They had mud, as you say, insults, cans thrown at them. Just the palpable sense of anger in a region that does feel abandoned. Clearly, over 200 people have died in these horrendous floods. That is a horrific amount of suffering. And some of these people, they still haven't had emergency services out to them. There seems to be some kind of breakdown in communications between the municipality authority and the central government authority. And I suppose the minute people see like an authority figure, like an actual king and queen, of course they're going to be the focus of all that sort of rage and anger and despair at the situation.
Aldi?
It is just such a shocking story, not just because we're seeing members of a European royal family have mud thrown at them and insults held at them, but also because there's something that feels very close about this natural disaster. Many Brits go on holiday in Spain. Lots of us have walked down streets like the streets we're seeing now, strewn with debris and cars piled up, and hearing that over 270 people have died. There's a familiarity with this, which we don't necessarily see with a lot of natural disasters. We always think of them as happening somewhere else, not in Western Europe, but this feels close.
Yeah, absolutely. There's also roughly 1 million Brits living in Spain. And the other shocking number is that 2,000 people are still missing. Yeah. So the official death toll is 217, but realistically, unfortunately, that number is likely to rise. Rachel, do you think there's any lessons here to learn? Because, of course, these kinds of natural disasters, you know, sometimes they happen, but it's all about being prepared for them.
Well, there's two things here, isn't there? That first of all, there's the lack of preparedness, and we can see that with, certainly in the UK, we know that the UK government, the Conservatives, have chronically underfunded flooding resource protections, etc., for decades, so that when something terrible does happen, it's worse. And I guess we can see the signs of that in Spain as well. But I think there's another element here where you say these things are far away. They're not. They've been in Europe for some time. You know, these are the effects, the devastating effects of climate change that we see, the climate catastrophe hitting the shores of Europe. It's not just the frequency, but the severity, both of which are getting worse and are demonstrably a product of the climate crisis.
Yeah, I mean, forest fires, for example, usually in summer around that part of Europe. Rachel Albee, thank you so much. Stay with us. Coming up, the Chancellor admits she was wrong for saying that taxes wouldn't go up.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent. Free wherever you get your news.
I'm Mark Stone, and I'm Sky's correspondent based here in Washington, D.C. Sky News, get the full story first.
I'm Katie Spencer, and I'm Sky News' arts and entertainment correspondent.
I'm Lisa Dowd, and I'm one of Sky's Midlands correspondents. The reason I do this job is because you never know where it's going to lead.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war. This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away.
So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
Gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos, analysis, up at 6%. Podcasts, watching us live. Joins us live all in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
A lot of action going on. I'm Alex Crawford, and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
This is what makes the job so fantastic.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers.
We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
The most significant day of this conflict.
They keep telling us that they want aid.
And this is what's left of it.
Tanks, heavy vehicle.
Why only in America?
People want their country to work.
Just want a job in a normal life.
Why are these homes empty?
I want you to be honest with people.
That has happened within minutes.
Sky News, the full story first. Free wherever you get your news.
I say, bring it on.
With America divided and tensions running high, get ready for an election like no other.
Join our teams as we follow the campaign trail as America decides.
We will win, win, win.
Get closer to the action this US election with full reaction and analysis.
Sky News, the full story first.
Welcome back. You're watching the press preview with me now, Rachel Sharby and Albi Amankona. Okay, let's go to the Daily Express. We're leading with a story that actually, we broke, or Rachel Reeves gave that quote to Trevor Phillips, was speaking to him on Trevor Phillips on Sunday. She's saying, I was wrong to say that I wouldn't put up taxes. So she basically said that she was wrong to state during the election campaign that taxes would not have to rise, because she claims at the time she couldn't have known about the black hole in the finances. Albi.
I was always of the view that Labour just needed to be honest during the election campaign and say they were going to raise taxes. I think that was quite clear to most people who were going to vote for Labour that this was going to happen. I don't think the number one thing on Labour voters' minds at the most recent election was, oh, we're voting for Labour because we don't want them to raise taxes. I think people voted for Labour because they wanted a change, they wanted public services to be better. So I think Rachel she has been honest in what she is saying. She was wrong to say that she didn't have to raise taxes. But I just wonder whether or not they needed to go through all of this political difficulty in order to get to this point now.
Rachel?
No, I actually completely agree with that. They just keep making these giant rods for their own back, and they're so unnecessary, and they're just strategically quite dumb. She could have absolutely, I think there was a groundswell of support for, popular support for raising taxes if it was going to pay for the NHS and for other public services, particularly schools. And so they could quite easily have made that argument, right? Instead, they decided not to, and they decided to be all doom and gloom about it and say, oh, it'll be really, really difficult, it's going to be awful, everything's a nightmare, it's going to take us ages to recover, and there's going to be austerity cuts, right? And then, they come out and do something slightly different. It's still an austerity-ish budget, but with a little bit of tax. And they could have just said that to begin with.
And there's some specific taxes that are getting a lot of attention. If we look at the Times front page there, Dyson blasts spiteful budget, and this is Sir James Dyson, who is basically saying that Rachel Reeves raising inheritance tax on farms and family businesses would be the death of entrepreneurship. Albi, do you agree with that statement?
Broadly speaking, I would agree with Sir James's statement that this is a spiteful budget. Notwithstanding what I said earlier about what I think Rachel Reeves should have done during the election campaign, I don't actually agree with the after tax rises that we have seen, especially when it comes to things like national insurance contributions. Ultimately, the government can't just push a button and create economic growth. The private sector creates economic growth. And it's what the government should be doing is creating the conditions where the private sector can thrive, create growth, create jobs. What we saw in the budget earlier on this week was the complete opposite of that.
I mean, even the IMF, that great left-wing bastion, says that actually private sector doesn't create economic growth. It does not trickle down, and that's the problem. We've got rampant wealth inequality in this country, as well as a depressed GDP compared to other nations on both factors. If you're going to address the inequality in this country, then you need to tax people in the top 5, 10%. The tiniest glimmer of trying to do that. It's not even, I mean, personally, I agree with you about national insurance. I wouldn't have done that. I'd have taxed capital gains. I'd have made taxing wealth equal to taxing income. That's how you're going to equalise or deal with the rampant inequality. But it's striking that even the tiniest bit of taxing the people who can most afford it in this country.
I don't know that farmers can most
screaming.
afford it.
Most of them are not going to get taxed, right? Most of the farmers, we're talking about the tiny percentage at the top who have estates worth millions of pounds that are going to get taxed. And the fact that, you know, all these newspapers are screaming at the tiniest effort to redistribute wealth in this country so that people can finally at least begin to start to make ends meet is very indicative of our press, more than anything else, I would say.
I think what is more important is that we get the economy growing. What I don't like is this left-wing attitude of we've got to try and divide up this pie. What about growing the pie? All right, you can't really grow pies, but you understand what I'm saying.
Trickle-down doesn't work,
but it's not. I'm not talking about trickle-down. What I'm saying is that in order for public services to be funded in this country, we can't tax our way to prosperity. We've got to create prosperity, and the way that we create prosperity is through business. And businesses pay taxes, and taxes pay for public services.
Let me just bring up the front page of The Guardian, because there's a story about Kemi Badenoch, who I'm guessing will be making similar arguments to that as leader of the opposition. The headline here, Partygate scandal was overblown. Albi, I know that you wanted to see Kemi Badenoch as leader of the Tories, so now she is. What do you make of the fact that she kind of had her first gaffe talking about Partygate?
I don't think it was a gaffe, actually. The interview that she was making was with Laura Kuenssberg on the BBC, of course, and she said that she felt Partygate was overblown because of the fact that the government shouldn't have actually put those regulations on people's lives. There shouldn't have been fixed penalty notices. People shouldn't have been penalised for it, and therefore that's why it was overblown. She actually also said that the public were not wrong to be upset about Partygate. The problem is that we should not have criminalised everyday activities in the way that we did. And I think that's a view that a lot of people hold in this country, and I'm personally quite pleased to see Kemi Badenoch out there making that argument.
We're running out of time. I'm sure we'll talk about it in the next hour. For the moment, Albi, Rachel, thank you both. Coming up next on Sky News at 11.
There's always more to the news than a headline. We want to discover, to delve a little deeper, to find out what's really going on. Explanation, analysis, the people at the heart of every story. I'm Neil Patterson, and this is the Sky News Daily Podcast. So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. A new start to Sunday.
I'm ready. Are you?
Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.